Hello, welcome to another video. Please like, share and subscribe for more amazing story. True God in Another Worlds, Tensura x Tbate, by Tempest_King_20. Chapter 49 Team Fighting Class PT.1 Arthur Lewin Pav. My body couldn't help but tremble in suppressed anger, the raw intensity pulsating through every fiber of my being. The thought of being in the same class as that insufferable brat Lucas was enough to make my blood boil. But to make matters worse, it was a team fighting class. The sick irony of having that traitor in a class focused on learning team cohesion in battles almost made me want to laugh bitterly. As our eyes locked, Lucas gazed at me with apathy, his eyes devoid of any remorse or recognition. It was as if I was nothing more than an insignificant insect scuttling on the ground, unworthy of his attention. My jaw clenched, my body tense, as waves of disdain washed over me. I could practically feel the seething anger radiating off of him, the arrogance and entitlement pouring from his every pore. I turned my gaze to my brother, hoping to find solace in his presence. His strong, angular features were set in a cold smile, his stormy gold eyes blazing with a venomous contempt for Lucas. The disdain in his expression echoed my own. But unlike me, my brother seemed to have a plan, a way to make Lucas pay for the treachery he had committed. "It seems he hasn't changed his position," Sylvie remarked icily, her voice laced with a mixture of resignation and disgust as she too observed Lucas with disdain. "Apparently, the Wykes family bribed the jailers," Rimuru revealed, his voice tinged with a hint of bitterness. The revelation sent shockwaves through me. I had thought Rimuru, with his connections and power, would intervene and put an end to this injustice. "Did you know?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady as a wellspring of emotions threatened to overflow. "I know what you're thinking," Rimuru responded, his tone measured, trying to calm my rising rage. "But the Wykes didn't just bribe the jailers. They managed to silence the journalists and manipulate the narrative. They have the entire media tainted in their favor." Sylvie interjected, her voice filled with disbelief. "But why didn't you take action?" Rimuru gave a nonchalant shrug, his expression revealing a hint of resignation. "Because it would have been futile," he explained. "Once it was revealed that the eldest son and heir of the Wykes family is a Lance, their influence and power became insurmountable. They can conceal any wrongdoing with impunity." My frustration reached its peak, and I couldn't help but voice my indignation. "And are you just going to let them get away like this?" I demanded, my voice tinged with anger and disbelief. Rimuru's gaze sharpened, determination shining in his eyes. "Of course not," he declared, his voice dripping with repressed contempt and anger. "What I want is not just to punish and kill Lucas. I want to destroy, eliminate, and bring down the entire Wykes family. Their corruption runs deep, entangled in every sector of society, and it's time for the world to see their true colors." "But how?" Sylvie interjected, her voice a mixture of doubt and curiosity. Rimuru's smile widened, a twisted excitement emanating from his being. "You don't have to know about that," he said, his voice filled with a calculated certainty. "I'll deal with them, so there's no need for you to do anything. Soon the Wykes family will fall like a house of cards." Our conversation was cut short by a sudden loud voice booming over the field. It was instantly clear that all students were turning their heads to locate where the voice had come from. My eyes shot straight up, and that's when I saw the massive hawk-like monobeast hovering over the field. It was at least 4 meters long and had a wingspan well over 8 meters. The hawk tucked its sharp talons underneath it as it slowly descended, revealing a well-toned woman with a giant sword strapped to her back. She stood up on the back of the hawk, making an impressive appearance. Ree's eyes sparkled with amusement, and he smirked. Well, look who decided to make a grand entrance. It seems our instructor is in quite the mood today," he quipped. "Welcome. My name is Professor Glory, and I will be the one teaching all of you brats. This flare hawk is Torch, my precious bond." The professor introduced herself and her bond with great pride. The first thing I did was measure the stage our professor's monocore was at. However, in trying to inspect her, I felt a sudden sharp pain in my head as Professor Glory's eyes whipped towards me. She noticed my actions and gave me a confident smile, gazing down in my direction. Hopping off of her flare hawk, she began to make her way around the group of students in her class. Her gaze studied each student she passed, looking more closely at some than others. "I have to say, you guys have set the bar pretty high for all of the other classes," she announced after inspecting Lucas. Her inspection of the DC and SC members was a bit longer and punctuated by occasional nods of approval. Well, if it isn't my newest colleagues, the two brothers Lewins. It's a pleasure to meet you. Professor Glory gave us a playful grin, appearing to be on the verge of teasing us. The students seemed to be murmuring amongst themselves in confusion, until one male upperclassman raised his hand. Professor Glory, what do you mean by colleagues? Ah, all of you already know them as the captain of the DC and a member of the DC. True prodigies, if I do say so myself. They're also newly appointed professors for the practical mana manipulation class that you guys all took during your underclassmen years. She gave me a firm pat on the back. WHAAT? You can't be serious, Professor? If these brats are professors, then I'm the king of this world. What has this academy turned into, to accept a freshman as a professor? How is that even possible? Even the bet upperclassmen these days don't get picked to be professors, but those first years did. Everyone seemed annoyed with that information that came out of nowhere. I mean, Emily said how gossip flies around this school at lightning speed, but it seems the upperclassmen never pay attention to what's said in the under division. Unless everyone is talking about it. They're so annoying, Sylvie remarked, her gaze flickering dismissively towards the protesting students. I couldn't help but nod in agreement. The outburst of complaints and indignation was almost deafening. Professor Glory, however, seemed unfazed by the uproar around her, her eyes twinkling mischievously as she addressed the class. Now, let's not jump straight into complaints, she chided playfully. We should have more faith in the director's decisions. And in Arthur's case, he has certainly proven himself by defeating the previous professor in class. A sly wink was directed my way, but it did little to ease the tension in the room. The complaints continued to swirl around us, and I could sense the dissatisfaction growing among the students. But Professor Glory, the underclassmen professors aren't all that great anyway. One student interjected, voicing a common sentiment shared by many. I bet some of the upperclassmen students here could beat most of them. Haha. To be honest, I'm itching to test how strong you two really are. Unfortunately, Goodsky made it clear for us to not do that. So, these students here will test you guys in my place. She put her hands on her hip, grinning in anticipation. I glanced around at the other students, noticing a shift in the atmosphere that was almost palpable. The male students seemed to be brimming with a competitive energy, their eyes blazing with determination as they zeroed in on Ri and me. It was as if they viewed us as rivals to be conquered, eager to prove their own strength against us. On the other hand, the female students exuded a different kind of intensity, their gazes predatory as they scanned us with a hunger that made me uneasy. It felt as though they saw us as prey to be hunted, their anticipation palpable in the way they practically salivated at the idea. Claire and Curtis exchanged a look of surprise, clearly caught off guard by the turn of events. Tess, on the other hand, clapped her hands with a sense of pride. Clive's scowl deepened, his disapproval evident in his narrowed eyes. Lucas, on the other hand, observed us with a renewed interest. Well, Director Goodsky did mention that we should ease into our upper division classes, I interjected, trying to diffuse the tension that was building in the room. However, Ri on the other hand didn't care.
Oh, come on. That's no fun now, is it? In order to get proper respect, a certain amount of skill needs to be shown, you know. It's just to prove to us that you are actually capable of being in this upper division class. Isn't that right, class? Professor Glory shouted. Yeah, was this a military boot camp or something? Why was there always a reason to prove myself in whatever situation came up?
I let out a frustrated sigh, feeling defeated as I faced Professor Glory. What did you have in mind, Professor Glory? I asked, resigned to whatever she had planned. I knew there was no point in arguing with someone who seemed unwilling to listen to reason. Fear not, my dear student. I am a just and fair woman, she declared with a confidence that seemed almost forced. Just and fair, my ass. I couldn't help but roll my eyes at her claim of fairness. I could swear she read my thoughts as she suddenly wrapped her strong arm around my neck, a firm grip that made me feel like I couldn't escape. Her muscles were toned and hardened, not unlike a man's. We will kick off this semester with a little game, Professor Glory announced, her eyes shining with excitement at the prospect. Wouldn't that be fun? What kind of game are you suggesting? I asked cautiously, trying to gauge her intentions. Her grin widened, a mischievous glint in her eyes as she reveled in the anticipation she was building. How about a mock team battle? War? She proposed, a mischievous spark in her eyes. How about having the 4 disciplinary committee officers on the same team, Professor? I feel like that could be a good way to let us work on teamwork as well. Curtis raises his hand as Claire nods in agreement next to him. The professor, her chin resting on her hand as she pondered the suggestion, smiled brightly at the idea. Not a bad idea, she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement at the possibilities. However, a tall and stoic black-haired teen with a serious expression on his face spoke up, his voice tinged with concern. But Professor, both Curtis and Claire are among the top students in this academy. It wouldn't be fair to have both of them on the same team as him, he pointed out, furrowing his brow in thought. The professor paused for a moment, considering the teen's words. Suddenly, that's true. Aha! I got it, she exclaimed, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. For the DC team, we will have Arthur play the role of king, the match resulting in an immediate loss if he gets put out of battle. I think that should be fair. Now, what about the other team? Her voice was full of excitement as she began to brainstorm the possible candidates for the opposing team.
As the discussion shifted towards selecting the opponents for the disciplinary committee team, Clive raised his hand with a suggestion. How about having the student council as their opponents? He proposed. The professor's eyebrows shot up in surprise at the suggestion. Oh, now things are getting interesting. But, she scanned the classroom, her gaze settling on Tess, the president of the student council. I was told that 4 of you from the student council will be in my class. Where is the 4th one? She inquired, her curiosity piqued. The realization dawned on me as I tried to deduce who the missing member could be. It couldn't be Fable or Jared, so who was the 4th member of the student council? Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the classroom, causing heads to turn towards the doorway. A girl with dark blue hair and blood-red eyes stood there, slightly breathless from her rush to get to class on time. I am sorry for my late arrival, she apologized, her voice soft but determined. Ah, there you are, Kara. I was just about to ask for you. Now that everyone is here, let's get started with the game. Professor Glory announced, clapping her hands together with enthusiasm. Where have you been, Kara? Lily asked, a hint of concern in her voice as she glanced at Kara. Kara sighed and ran a hand through her hair, a sheepish expression on her face. There was a quarrel between some of the students, and no one from the DC was around to handle it. I had to step in and try to defuse the situation, she explained. I see. Ree nodded appreciatively. Thank you for handling it, Kara. Kara shrugged modestly, a small smile crossing her lips. It's all part of being a member of the student council. With the team now complete, Professor Glory took center stage, her presence commanding the attention of the entire room. She began to explain the rules of the mock team battle in a firm and authoritative tone, making sure to emphasize the importance of following the guidelines set in place. The match will have a time limit of 30 minutes, where we will have a short discussion and a breakdown of it afterwards. Please gear up. With that, a pile of what looked like exercise gear dropped to the ground out of Professor Glory's dimension ring. Turning serious, she begins explaining. These are special equipment designed by artificers to measure the amount of damage that is dealt. This equipment will activate, releasing a shrill noise, if the damage it takes passes the threshold that's encrypted into it. If anyone chooses to ignore this warning and continues to fight or cast spells, it will lead to immediate expulsion from my class and other possible consequences regarding your stay here as a student. This rule goes for any upper division fighting class in this academy, so engrave this rule into your guys' brains. All of you are all at the level where protecting yourselves with mana shouldn't be a problem. Let me reiterate this, but these equipments don't protect you, so don't rely on it as a source of protection. She announces to everyone else in the class as well. After a moment of silence, she raised her voice, demanding confirmation from the students. Do I make myself clear? Yes. Good. Now, the 8 of you gear up. She gets back on her bond while the rest of the students head towards the viewing platform. Kara approached us, her expression a mix of confusion and curiosity as she raised her hands in a questioning gesture. Sorry, but can someone please fill me in on what's happening here? Lilia turned to her friend with a sigh, preparing herself to explain the situation. "We're about to have a mock team battle between the Duelist Club and the Student Council," she said with a hint of exasperation, shaking her head slightly in disbelief. Why? Kara's brows furrowed in confusion as she tried to make sense of it all. "Sigh, it's all because of Clive," Lilia replied, a hint of frustration in her voice as she led Kara to where their equipment was. Curtis gave me a friendly pat on the back as he picked up his gear, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "Looks like we're in for an early practice session. Let's give it our all, Arthur. I still remember you wanting a sword back then for practicing as a hobby. Let's see how good you are. We can't let the DC's reputation suffer, right? I'll make sure those who don't meet our standards get some extra practice," Claire said with a mischievous grin as she gathered her gear. "Ellie, go sit over there," re-instructed Ellie gently, guiding her to a spot on the sidelines where she could witness the mock battle unfold. Ellie bounced with excitement, patting Sylvie on her lap, eagerly awaiting the upcoming action. Clive and Lucas walk past me, ignoring me as I go after them to pick up my gear. The gear consists of a tight jacket and a series of straps that I wrap around my legs. The jacket also had sleeves made of some special straps that I was supposed to wrap around my arms. I was having trouble putting on the arm wraps when Tess came up and helped me bind the straps around my right arm. "Let me help you with that," she said gently. "Thank you, Tess," I smirked while letting her help me. As I looked around, I noticed Lilia lending a hand to Rimuru, ensuring he was ready for the upcoming battle. "You're capable of taking down an S-class mana beast, yet struggle with tying a strap." Lilia teased Rimuru good-naturedly, a playful glint in her eye. Rimuru chuckled. "I never said I couldn't tie a strap, just needed some extra help this time." Lilia laughed, shaking her head in mock exasperation. Sure. Just making sure you're all set for the battle," she quipped before turning her attention back to Rimuru's gear. Meanwhile, Tess had finished helping me with my gear, and I turned to her with a smile. "Let's both give it our all out there. I'm eager to see how much you've improved," I remarked, a glint of anticipation in my eyes. Returning my smile with a confident expression, Tess replied, "You better watch out then," before darting off towards the other side of the field, where the members of the student council were gathered. I head toward where Curtis and Claire and Rimuru were situated. Claire's muscles tensed as she stretched, her sword glinting in the sunlight. Curtis sat atop his majestic world lion, Grotter, a look of determination on his face. Even with Grotter, we're still at a disadvantage because they have two conjurers and Clive is a long-range augmenter. The fact that it's an instant loss for us if your gear activates gives us a seriously limited set of options. Claire was leaning on her unsheathed sword while stretching her leg back.
"You're right. Claire and I don't really know anything about your fighting style, so we'll match your pace. We'll take priority in protecting you while we get in range to do some damage." Curtis nodded in agreement, his hand affectionately stroking Grotter's mane. I scanned the battlefield, looking for Tess, Lilia, Syrah, and Clive. They were a few dozen meters away, their eyes locked on us, ready to attack. I unsheathed my sword, Dawn's Ballad, but kept it at my side as I surveyed the battlefield. "Whistles. That's a beautiful sword you have there, Arthur," Claire commented, her gaze lingering on my blade for a moment before refocusing on the enemy. Before I could respond, Rimuru issued his orders with a calm authority. "Curtis, go to Tess, Claire will take care of Clive, Art will face Syrah and I will face Lily." Rimuru's voice was calm but firm as he drew his own sword, a simple katana. We nodded in unison, preparing ourselves for the impending battle. Claire unleashed a fierce battle aura, infusing wind and fire mana into her body, while I channeled wind and earth mana into my own being and sword. The ground beneath me pulsed with my power as my hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. As Professor Glory's voice boomed across the battlefield, signaling the start of the match, a surge of adrenaline coursed through my veins. "Let the match commence."